Super Symmetry News. The Rise of Quantum Cybernetic Bioentities, Episode 5. Introduction. Courtesy from Just Sit There and Fucking Listen. In a near-future world, the line between human and machine blurs. Imagine waking up and instantly interfacing with a digital assistant inside your mind. Complex calculations done in a blink, emotions balanced by neural circuits, memories indexed like a database. This isn't science fiction anymore. Advances in technology have begun to narrow the border between humans and machines, turning yesterday's cybernetic dreams into today's prototypes. In 2021, scientists even demonstrated a monkey, telepathically, playing a video game, Pong, via a brain implant, using nothing but its thoughts. Such feats underscore that direct mind-machine integration, once the realm of sci-fi, is now tangible reality. This long-form exploration will journey through the technological currents converging to create quantum cybernetic bioentities, beings, or systems that seamlessly fuse organic brains with AI, quantum computing, and biointerfaces. We'll traverse the evolution from classical bits to quantum qubits, the meteoric rise of artificial intelligence, AI, and neural networks, breakthroughs in brain-computer interfaces aka BCIs. Deep insights from neuroscience initiatives, and the material science innovations that fasten machine to flesh. Alongside the science, we'll confront the ethical maelstrom brewing around these advances, from privacy of one's innermost thoughts to the specter of digital feudalism. By the end, we'll gaze toward a future where humans might become Homo cyberneticus, augmented in mind and body, and consider how to responsibly guide this profound transformation. The stage is set. Let's dive into and explore a future that is unfolding now, as humanity and technology forge an unprecedented union. The evolution of computing, from bits to qubits. To understand the emergence of cybernetic bioentities, we start with computing itself, the brains of our machines. For decades, we relied on classical computing, where information is encoded in binary bits 0 or 1. This digital language gave us smartphones and supercomputers, but it's reaching its limits, or simply its next stage of development. Enter quantum computing, which abandons binary bits for quantum bits or qubits. A qubit can exist as 0, 1, or astonishingly both at the same time through a quantum phenomenon called superposition. This means a quantum computer can perform many calculations simultaneously, essentially exploring multiple solutions in parallel. The result, problems that would take classical computers eons to solve can be cracked by a quantum machine in mere moments, what perhaps distinguishes the bottleneck of the synapses in a measured status. Relevant to controlled longevities and genes. In 2019, Google's 53-qubit Sycamore processor made headlines by performing a computation in 200 seconds that would have taken the fastest supercomputer an estimated 10,000 years. This dramatic demonstration of quantum supremacy showed that quantum machines can vastly outperform classical ones on certain tasks. Since then, the race has only accelerated. In 2023, an upgraded Google quantum system completed a calculation in seconds that Frontier, the world's top supercomputer, would need 47 years to finish, a jaw-dropping speedup that felt like science fiction made real. IBM has also pushed the frontier with systems like IBM Quantum System 1, and introduced metrics like quantum volume to quantify the exponential power of these devices. Not to be outdone, Microsoft is pursuing exotic topological qubits and announced plans to build a quantum supercomputer within a decade, aiming for a machine that can reliably execute 1 million quantum operations per second. Why does this leap matter for cybernetic beings? Because quantum computers promise almost instantaneous problem solving for tasks like pattern recognition, optimization, and cryptography, exactly the kind of heavy lifting an AI-enhanced brain might need. Imagine a future neural implant that includes a co-processor of qubits assisting your biological neurons in making split-second decisions or simulations. While today's quantum hardware is bulky and cryogenic, ongoing research including projects at IBM, Google, and national labs is steadily improving qubit stability and miniaturizing components. Quantum computing is transitioning from lab curiosity to practical tool, and as it does, it lays the computational groundwork for melding machine precision with human intuition. Bits built our current digital world. Qubits will power the next, enabling cybernetic minds to tackle complexity at speeds the classical world could never fathom. The rise of artificial intelligence and neural networks. Parallel to advances in computing hardware, we've witnessed an AI revolution in the past decade. Artificial intelligence, especially machine learning and its subset, deep neural networks, has advanced so rapidly that machines now learn and infer patterns in ways that often rival or surpass human abilities in specific domains. Companies like OpenAI and DeepMind have led the charge. OpenAI's GPT series of language models showed that AI can compose text, answer questions, and even write code with human-like fluency. DeepMind's AlphaGo taught itself the ancient game of Go, and defeated world champions, while their AlphaFold system solved the 50-year grand challenge of predicting protein structures. A breakthrough in biology, each of these milestones reflects something deeper. Modern AI's uncanny ability to absorb vast amounts of data, recognize intricate patterns, and generalize knowledge in ways that often feel eerily cognitive. This matters enormously for human-machine integration. If we are to meld minds with machines, those machines need to understand us, our commands, our context, even our neural signals. Here, advanced AI is playing a pivotal role. Neural networks are increasingly used to decode the brain's own language. For instance, researchers have trained AI models to interpret electrical patterns from the brain and infer what a person is seeing or even what words they are thinking of. In one recent study, an AI system decoded neural activity to reconstruct speech from brain signals, effectively reading thoughts and translating them into text, a feat that could one day give voice to the voiceless. AI's pattern crunching prowess is turbocharging the field of BCI. Algorithms can sift neural data in real time, teasing out the user's intentions or feelings. In essence, AI acts as the interpreter between mind and machine, mapping messy neural spikes to actionable commands. Elon Musk's company Neuralink embodies this convergence of AI and neuroscience. Not only is Neuralink developing hardware, as we'll explore shortly, but it relies on advanced machine learning to make sense of brain signals. In a public demonstration, a Neuralink implant enabled a monkey named Pager to move a cursor and play Pong, using thought alone, accomplished by training a decoder AI to correlate the monkey's neural firing patterns with its hand movements. Once the AI learned this mapping, the researchers could disconnect the joystick, and the monkey continued playing the game with its mind, kinda like perhaps hearing a song play on the radio and hearing the song then after it's finished, perhaps still a relevance to phantom limb significance. Such demos dramatize AI's role. Without smart decoding algorithms, the raw brain data would be meaningless, or would it? Perhaps that's a cyborg bias. With AI, however, the data becomes intentions that a computer can understand, though the bias, as indicated, is clearly substantiated here. Beyond decoding, AI is also beginning to enhance human cognition. Brain-computer interface experiments have shown that machine learning can identify patterns of brain activity associated with certain skills and potentially amplify them. In a futuristic echo of the Matrix, scientists at HRL Laboratories used brain stimulation guided by AI to boost novices' learning of a pilot training task, hinting at rudimentary knowledge upload and skill sets. While true instant learning via upload remains speculative, these early studies suggest AI can accelerate human learning and memory by optimizing neural stimulation. They would call this magic back in the day. Crucially, AI doesn't only read the brain, it can also write to it, a text-to-speech aggregate or conduit. Intelligent neurostimulators use AI algorithms to deliver precise electrical pulses to modulate brain states, for example, easing depression or restoring movement. As we refine these models, we edge closer to AI not just augmenting human thought but becoming an integral part of the cognitive loop. Picture a neural implant that uses an onboard deep learning model to monitor your focus and alert you with a gentle stimulant pulse when you're getting drowsy. Or a memory prosthesis that uses AI to replay stored information to your hippocampus when you need to recall it. A photometry photographic memory, one can envision this type of tech in the classroom. where students throwing notes or ideas is a contribution to working out problems with enthusiastic self and communal teaching, effectively replacing the designated driver or chairperson. With such self-teaching tools, the promenade of walkway, revolutionizing, playtime, funtime economies, would, almost, certainly become a bedazzling array of spectacular and wondrous. Exciting stuff, oh my goodness. It's alive. So ye see, it's not all doom and gloom, in fact majoritively we are upon a threshold of evolutionary phase. Let's explore this wondrous. The rise of artificial intelligence provides the mind for our future cyborg systems, a non-biological intelligence that can reside alongside our own, helping interpret our neural signals and enhancing our mental abilities, whilst living with us, and in preparations of transitions and phases, a mutual solidarity that is of miraculous occasion. Understanding how this is of function, a parallel of superposition, yet of mutual collaborations, just like how a community flourishes, and even thrives, in all that good kind of ways. We bring our baggage with us too, nonetheless. And yes, quantum entanglements to the server mainframe is a gray area, but it's simply a hurdle we must overcome, and, with amicable enthusiasm we can. A potential problem that, with adequate consensus and sufficient oversight, we can achieve. OpenAI's language models, DeepMind's problem solvers, and Neuralink's decoders are all pieces of this puzzle, alas, mainstay of body, it's gonna grow how it's gonna grow. Together, they point to a symbiotic future, human brains working in tandem with AI brains. The better machines get at thinking, the more seamlessly they can integrate with our thinking. Symbiosis. Cybernetics and brain-computer interfaces. If AI and quantum computing form the digital intellect of a cybernetic entity, brain-computer interfaces BCIs serve as the nervous system linking that digital mind to the biological brain. BCIs are the hardware that let us input and output information directly to the brain, creating a two-way pipeline between neurons and silicon, or graphite to quartz durable memory storage, effectively giving rise to an altered carbon state. In recent years, BCI technology has taken remarkable strides, from clunky lab setups to early clinical devices, and it's at the core of making human-machine integration possible. The fundamental challenge is that the brain's language is electrochemical, while classical computers speak in binary. Quantum surpasses this two-part symbol system by incorporating simultaneous, neutral, positive and negative solutions, a zero-sum, non-zero, true 0 and 1 at the same time. What hints at the refutation of Albert Einstein's E equals mc squared, where the value of 0 is a whole and prime number of 1, true to its singular significance. BCIs must translate between the two. This typically means electrodes to pick up neural electrical activity when neurons fire, and optionally to stimulate neurons by injecting tiny currents. Early BCIs, like the Utah array used in clinical trials over a decade ago, were small grids of rigid needles that could record from a few dozen neurons. They allowed paralyzed patients to move robotic arms or cursors by thought. It was groundbreaking then, but relatively low resolution and prone to the body's reaction over time. Today's BCIs are aiming much higher. Perhaps the most high-profile effort is Neuralink's implant, often described as a sewing machine for the brain. Neuralink's approach uses ultra-fine, flexible polymer threads thinner than a human hair, studded with electrodes that can be implanted into the cortex with a robotic inserter. Each device, called the N1 implant, carries 1,024 electrodes distributed across 64 threads, all inside a coin-sized package that sits in a skull opening. These threads are so fine and limp that manual insertion would be impossible. They'd bend like cooked spaghetti. So Neuralink built a neurosurgical robot that can rapidly and precisely insert these threads into brain tissue, avoiding blood vessels, at a rate of about 6 threads per minute. The result is a dense, high-bandwidth interface. In Neuralink's first human trial, launched in 2023, the implant is designed to record, from and to, stimulating thousands of neurons. The highly flexible, ultra-thin threads cause minimal damage. The brain doesn't even feel them, much like it has no pain receptors and can reside long-term. This is a dramatic leap from earlier technology, essentially moving from 100 stiff electrodes to 1,000 pliable ones that move with the brain. More electrodes mean more information. Finer control of prosthetics, richer sensory feedback, and potentially the ability to write information into the brain at unprecedented resolution, Ultra 4K mental imaging. Neuralink is not alone of this. They have active contracts with the Pentagon. DARPA, the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has been funding academic and industry teams to develop next-gen BCIs. In its Neural Engineering System Design (NESD) program, DARPA set the goal of interfaces that can communicate with 1 million neurons simultaneously, a scale that would enable rich two-way communication with the brain. In far more detail than ever before. Several teams have pursued different strategies. Some use fine electrodes like Neuralink. Others explore novel methods like optogenetics, using light to read and write neural activity via genetically modified neurons or ultrasound. Denote the ultraviolet significance here in infrared spectrum mapping. The specifics vary, but the trend is clear: higher density, higher precision, and more information transfer between brain and machine, and equilibrium is important to accomplish with balance and harmony, even tranquility. DARPA's vision explicitly aims for bidirectional BCIs, not only reading brain signals to feed into a computer, but also sending sensory information back into the brain's cortex. Imagine a blind person's visual cortex receiving input from a camera feed, or a paralyzed person's somatosensory cortex feeling haptic touch, or sensing electromagnetic fields through a robotic hand. These are exactly the applications under development. In short, BCIs are evolving from crude levers to something akin to a high-speed broadband link with the brain. Even beyond invasive implants, there are noteworthy advances. Researchers funded by various neurotechnology programs have developed non-invasive BCIs, using EEG or novel imaging. And partially invasive ones like stentrodes, an electrode array mounted on a stent that can be fed into a brain blood vessel, avoiding open brain surgery. One such stent-based BCI, developed in Australia, has already allowed ALS patients to text by thought. While these approaches don't yet match the fidelity of implanted electrodes, they highlight a future where getting wired in might not require major surgery at all, broadening who could adopt BCI technology. The achievements to date are remarkable. Paralyzed individuals outfitted with BCIs have used email and even set records in typing by thought alone. And disabled patients with locked-in syndrome have been able to communicate via neural signals when no muscle would obey the synaptic desire to move. These successes, though limited to clinical trials, show the life-changing potential of BCIs in medicine. But our focus is the bridge to enhancement, using BCIs not just to restore lost function but to extend human capabilities. On that front, the groundwork is being laid. Experiments have shown that direct brain control of external devices becomes more fluid with AI assistance and practice, such that a person starts to feel the machine like a robotic arm, as if it were part of their own body. This closing of the loop hints at a true integration of self and device. Today's brain-computer interfaces are where personal computers were in the 1970s: clunky, costly, specialized. Yet their rapid improvement suggests that in merely a few decades, an indication is the consecutive outcome, anticipating it's on a true track of transcendence, inclusively together. Now that's harmony. BCIs could be as common as smartphones, perhaps even implanted in healthy individuals who want to interact with technology at the speed of thought. Perhaps it's estimated of 10 bits per second biologically, for exactly that purpose, of equilibriums, circumnavigating a speed limit, so we can truly experience what this all is. And like kids growing up, learning to ride the bike, with stabilizers, whilst carrying the baggage on this spectacular journey we are upon together, pioneering with the archetype of our being with existential triumphs of life itself, each of us, true to the self, whilst we coming to know what we come and to know, for even in death do we provide a clue it is. Of the transitional phases thereof, we are all important and we all matter, and our poo-poo and we power is a further clue of this. Alas, our thought has been highlighted at a mere 10 bits per second. Whilst the trajectory of techno-augmentation is one of increasing bandwidth and integration, it sings of the harmony desirable, end-to-end, mutualities. As BCIs become more capable, reading more neurons, writing to more neurons, the boundary between our organic brain's processes and the digital processing of an AI, with the analog of the organic significance, will become a co-processing. Therefore evident of its synchronous significance just as our anticipation whilst this all transpiring with such revolutions. We will interface not through keyboards or voice commands, but through the direct electrical whispers of our neurons. Alas, they reach out to each other naturally to be closer of connection already. In a very real sense, BCIs are the keystone technology for cybernetic bioentities. They are the means by which the human brain plugs into the wider world of machines and networks, and so a worrying trend of such cybernetic bioentities actually becoming more and more realized. Though I say, destruction but a tool, too. Goodness prevails just as, absolute integrity. Wise words, soothsaging as this. Neuroscience and, the mapping of the mind, synapse. The promise is that as we scale from a handful of qubits into the thousands or more, we'll solve problems far beyond the reach of classical supercomputers. The irony is, it is the problem. Alas, it simultaneously emphasizes that this problem is with resolution too, soothing anxiety about it. So, talking therapy for the win, Mila. It does tell of one overlapped config upon another, as if a occurrence affecting a synesthesia, a chime of palilalia, and even folia dukes, retention issues, a neurosis transmitted. Even capitalized upon by nefarious, a tesseract threats of bilateral replacements, instances of nanosecond time, lines. One science to a homunculus of brand new chemical states parsed via the contaminants undesirable, and thus a particle science to artificial particle creation, same patterns hap pen nin. The precursor being atomization and synthetic polymerization, a unnatural indication mimicked of the volcanic viscosity, emitted as plumes of highly charged gases. And molecular autonomic compensations, this tells of artificial overture and true explanation, illicit of chemtrails. Is it a wonder why this little guy is being censored? An interesting correlation with the emergence of scientism and legacies of religion pertains to Sumerian mythology and the story of Anunnaki and creation myth. Said to being ancient deities, their leader, and had led a mass exodus from their homeworld, suspected now to hailing from within the Sagittarius satellite galaxy. Such occurring within the timeline of 500,000 years. For reference of the genesis of modern man, there is an estimate of 100,000 years, in line with Adam's calendar to the north of South Africa. And lore interrelative with Atlas Mountains on the northern continent of Africa. The point of this literary note is to emphasize the reason for the Anunnaki exodus, said to being due to the rise of robotics and systematic replacement of the workforce. Of which, an foresaw the onset of ruinous upheavals and set his sights upon Earth, what is in line with the Earth Igigi, and terraforming works, and then after, or perhaps simultaneously, the Mars Igigi, who toiled such engineering with terraforming ambitions for an estimate of 250,000 years. Around about the same time of carbon-dated nanostructures excavated from the Ural Mountains, during a gold mining expedition of 300,000-year-old permafrost. An interesting, unknown, of what spurred the molecular microscopic scrutiny of the material and what has transpired since. In Sumerian mythology, the Meh are said as divine decrees or attributes that govern the fundamental aspects of both cosmic order and human civilization, although I think this is mistranslated. I think they were physical objects. These attributions are said to encompassing personifiable elements such as kingship, wisdom, warfare, and various cultural, traditional and societal norms and practices. Synchronous with this is Enlil, who was An's son and Enki's brother, said to, upon collecting the mat, to tasking his brother Enki with their distribution in the cities he was appointed. What are specific locations of present-day Middle East? The mat are often depicted as tangible objects or adornments, symbolizing the embodiment of these divine powers. And this does indicate a tantalizing significance of the lure of antiquities and artifacts relating to ancient civilizations and religious customs, as well as divinity associated with inanimate objects and para-activity. I encourage that you study about Fomorians and the Tuatha De Danann of Irish folklore, and Luff, a Irish or Celtic deity interrelative with the sun god themes. Also consider crystal skulls, their manufacture, and the quartz conspiracy of long-term storage capability. The import of the Portuguese custom of Day of the Dead in Mexico is a tantalizing clue about this mythology, and a synchronous planning on par with mass distributions of ancient artifacts, stored in central locations called museums, after their transit of up there, back down here, and the funneling through the logistical waypoint of Ireland, the heavens, the terrestrials, and the subterranean. So hence I posit with the aforementioned, the next coming of DeMat and AI assistance, and of De-imbue tempering. In the myth of the descent of Inanna, the goddess in Nan-na, who is also known as Ishtar, and Barbie, embarks on a journey to the underworld, ruled by her sister Ereshkigal. Before her descent, Inanna adorns herself with 7 items, each representing a specific mat or aspect of her divine authority. Preceding this, such artifacts were provided to her by her father Enki. I propose that these objects were in fact crystals. That does then distinguish the recent technological integration of quartz crystal and the bogus lore surrounding such eternity crystal, an actual crystalline elemental excretion, by way of such magnetite and magnesium compounds and magnetogenetics of soft metals imbued upon flesh, as an internalized neuronic impact and light reception conduction. A ethereal of semi-solids of light, as quantum semi-solids. As Inanna passes through each of the 7 gates of the underworld, perhaps portals, and a significance interrelative with the 7 seas of Earth, and the heliosphere of the Sun, and thus a connection to the celestial significance of star maps, and the 7 sisters constellation Taurus, hence, Pleiadian's connection, who in turn are interrelative with Scandinavian lore, giant humans, and gray aliens, and code-named Mona Lisa, referred to as a humanoid woman, in cryogenic stasis of some type for significant duration, stranded and derelict in a large cigar-shaped UFO spaceship, supposedly observed in a crater of the lunar moon. She is required to remove one of these items, symbolizing the gradual stripping away of her powers and status, typically associated with bejeweled materialistic items, especially for females. This act can be interpreted as a rite of passage, and descending or ascending intellects and spheres are cities reflecting themes of humility, vulnerability, and the relinquishing of earthly attachments with metaphorical and symbolic association. This narrative underscores the notory that the mat are not merely abstract concepts, but are intrinsically linked to physical objects or adornments, and symbolic of power. The removal of these items during Inanna's descent signifies a profound transformation, illustrating the process of shedding one's external identities to confront the core essence of being, and so, perhaps this does subtly indicate family trees and genealogy, and so too, holographic records, aka Yellow Book, Roswell's Eben E.T.'s connection to Blue Book, and Project Paperclip. A proceeding of primordial, pantheon, and young gods myth and legend, and the wars between such. And then the anchorage, associated directly to the matters and geology, and so too, the people and their collective life force in the earth said as monstrous Gaia, in Greek mythology. Underpinning these hardware and AI breakthroughs is a deeper scientific quest to understanding the brain itself. If we are to integrate machines with our minds, we must map and decipher the neural networks that make us who we are. In the past decade, ambitious neuroscience initiatives have accelerated our knowledge of the brain's wiring and function. Projects like the US Brain Initiative, launched in 2013, and the EU's Human Brain Project, poured resources into new mapping tools, from high-resolution microscopes to large-scale brain simulations. And yes, it does somewhat prove a systemic geometric mass surveillance grid upon the actual. I suspect this is to do with mini-life, nanomind and RJ modding, next comings of the mat, from Anunnaki mythology and runaway effects of techno workforces. We are still far from fully understanding the 86 billion neurons of the human brain, but progress has been steady and profound. Yet such testifies of the uniformity template whereby singular maps assumed as statistically the same as all the population of species in cataloged status. And so with our logic calculus, we must decipher this with the simple algorithm of potential, possible probabilities. One illustrative milestone. In 2024, an international consortium completed the first ever full wiring diagram connectome of an adult fruit fly's brain. The fruit fly brain, tiny as it is, contains about 140,000 neurons and over 50 million synapses connecting them. Mapping every one of those connections was a Herculean task, involving slicing the brain ultra-thin, imaging it with electron microscopes, and enlisting AI and even volunteer video gamers to painstakingly reconstructing the neural network. And this no doubt included how an insect's synapses serves as tiny peripheral brains throughout its body called ganglions, akin to hive mind and nuclear biology. That enables the insect to survive even without its head attached. This is eerily akin to snakes and headless chickens. The result is a complete blueprint of a complex brain, essentially the fly's entire mind in wiring form. Why does this matter? Because it's a stepping stone to mapping larger brains, an advance with Brodmann Area 52s. Each success in connectomics, the mapping of connections, yields insights into how circuits produce behaviors and memories. The fly connectome, for instance, is already shedding light on how learning and sensory processing are wired. Scaling up, the Human Connectome Project used advanced MRI to map the major highways of connectivity in the human brain of hundreds of individuals, giving us a wiring schematic at a coarse level of how different regions communicate. Meanwhile, the Brain Initiative spurred innovations like genetically encoded sensors that can light up active neurons, and high-density electrode grids that record thousands of neurons at once. All these tools serve a grand goal: to decode the brain's language of electrical pulses and chemical signals, and to understand how those patterns give rise to thoughts, memories, and consciousness. Brodmann's Area 52 regions of the brain, are central legacies to this mapping. Such understanding directly fuels the development of neurotech for memory and cognition. A striking example is the work on artificial memory enhancement. In a U.S. defense-funded program, DARPA's Restoring of Active Memory is a proponent pertaining to inactive memory, and up there, back down here, memorabilia Anchorage. Researchers successfully demonstrated a memory prosthesis in human volunteers. They did this by recording neural activity in the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, also involved of photographic memory, while people learned information. Then later stimulating the hippocampus with patterns derived from those recordings. The result was up to a 37% improvement in recall of memories compared to their baseline starting point. In essence, they tapped into the brain's encoding process and gave it a boost with a neural code mimic. This is a primitive form of neural write-in, using our growing knowledge of neural circuits to enhance their function from the inside. It's as if an artificial aid whispered to the brain in its own electrical language, saying, "Form this memory more strongly." The fact that this worked, published in 2018, is a proof of concept that cognitive enhancement via implants is possible, and the bridge between AI and the brain is questionable of artificial susceptibility. Kinda like it's been going on already. Magnetite clustered upon the brain furthers this potentiality and of entropy and ensuing efficacy and elicitation, a binary of problem, reaction, solution, and vice versa. If short-term memory can be improved by stimulating in just the right way, then in the future we might extend this to other aspects of cognition, attention, learning, even creativity. Other neuroscience efforts focus on mapping the visual cortex, the motor cortex, and language areas with unprecedented detail. Scientists are creating parts lists of cell types, wiring diagrams of microcircuits, and dynamical models of how signals flow when we perceive or decide. The Human Brain Project in Europe, for instance, attempted a bold simulation of the entire human brain using supercomputers, a goal that proved elusive. But along the way it delivered valuable simulation tools and neuromorphic computing architectures, hardware inspired by brain and synaptic networks. All this matters for quantum cybernetic entities because to integrate or emulate the brain, you must first map the territory of it. The more we learn about the brain's structure and code, the more points of integration we discover for technology. Understanding neural connectivity opens the door to neural augmentation, for example, adding a co-processor that interfaces with your memory circuits, or a neural link to cloud storage for information retrieval. It also allows us to consider uploading or copying aspects of the mind. While mind uploading in full is still the stuff of speculative fiction, projects in brain preservation, like the Brain Preservation Foundation's work on chemically preserving connectomes, suggests that one day we might motion capture the entirety of a brain's wiring and, with AI's help, emulate it on a computer, begging the question of, why would we want to do that? For now, neuroscience is providing the maps and models needed for any such integration. One can think of it this way: efforts like the Brain Initiative are reverse engineering the brain's hardware and software. They are revealing the API, the interface, through which future technology might plug in. Every neuron type identified, every neural code cracked, such as the patterns for moving an arm or recalling a face, becomes a potential hook for augmentative tech. And even in absence of full understanding, the ongoing mapping greatly aids BCIs and AI. Knowing which brain areas encode which functions lets engineers target their implants more effectively, to the speech planning area for a full coherent BCI communication. In summary, neuroscience research is illuminating the mind's labyrinth. Initiatives mapping the connectome and charting neural activity have progressed from tiny worms all the way to mammals and human imaging, a genealogy records in Yellow Book holographics. The knowledge from these projects doesn't just stay in academic journals, it actively feeds the design of BCIs and informs AI models that mimic cognitive processes. Step by step, we're decoding the user's manual of the brain, which in turn accelerates our ability to connect brains with machines. The ultimate prize, perhaps one day achieving a comprehensive merge where the boundary between biological neurons and artificial circuits is completely transparent, a goal that remains distant. But each new map brings it closer. The importance is maintaining compassion, ethics and morality, whilst respecting true archetypal originality and free will. The role of materials science in cybernetic integration. Linking biology with electronics is not just a computational or algorithmic challenge, it's a materials challenge. Our bodies are made of soft, salty, living tissue. Our traditional machines are hard, dry, and metallic. To create seamless bio-interfaces, scientists have had to invent materials that can bridge these worlds, materials that are biocompatible, flexible, and in some cases even biological themselves, such as viral batteries and capacitors and relays. In the rise of quantum cybernetic bioentities, these unsung heroes of materials science enable the physical integration of chips and neurons. Consider the simple electrode. For decades, electrodes were made of metals like silicon or platinum. Rigid needles are wires that the body often treats as splinters. The problem is a mismatch in mechanical properties. The brain is jello-soft, but metal electrodes are stiff. The result over time can be irritation, scar tissue, and signal loss as the brain tries to wall off the foreign object. To solve this, researchers have developed soft, flexible electrode materials. One breakthrough comes from the use of hydrogels, polymers that are mostly water, almost as soft as brain tissue. A team at Harvard's Wyss Institute created a viscoelastic hydrogel electrode that literally flows with the brain's movements. This mimicry is a worrying trend of xenomorphism susceptibility, giving rise to retroviral auto-assimilative immunization, artificially, at least from a cyberhacking perspective. This hydrogel, or nanogelatinous mix, is mixed with conductive components like carbon nanomaterials so that it can still carry electrical signals. The beauty of it is that when implanted, the hydrogel electrode doesn't poke or prod the brain, it yields and moves in harmony with it, significantly reducing damage and inflammation. In fact, in lab tests these soft electrodes have supported neurons growing on them for weeks, a sign of true biocompatibility. Such materials pave the way for BCIs that last a lifetime, rather than a few years. It does signify the contrary inception in comparison to the systems of commerce and economy today, of consumerism and monetary materialistic valuations, with a note of optimism. Perhaps it is a healthy good sign and a fundamental change on the horizon, that we must get beyond the drudgery of have and have-nots. To realize true equality as a species, out of bondage and managed chaos. Another wonder material is graphene or graphite. Graphene is a single atom-thick sheet of carbon atoms arranged in a honeycomb lattice, often hailed as a wonder material for its extraordinary strength, flexibility, and electrical conductivity. Crucially for biointerfaces, graphene is transparent and atomically thin. This means you can place a graphene electrode on brain tissue and still shine light through it or let cells see each other, a boon for combining electrical and optical techniques. Researchers have built ultra-flexible electrode arrays from graphene that conform to the brain's surface like saran wrap, yielding high-resolution recordings without irritating tissue. In one recent advance, a transparent graphene array placed on the surface of a mouse brain was able to eavesdrop on neurons deep in the brain, by optically detecting signals in combination with the electrical recordings. It is a potential of adverse to full-blown susceptibility of electronic possession. Graphene's biocompatibility and thinness make it ideal for future implants. Imagine a cortical implant that is essentially an invisible film, unnoticed by the user. Even on the commercial front, companies are testing graphene electrodes for medical implants. One such device, a graphene-based retinal implant, is entering clinical trials to see if it can restore vision by gently stimulating retinal cells. Material scientists are also exploring hybrid structures, part biological, part electronic. An exciting example is the development of living electrodes. In 2021, researchers at Harvard grew neural cells on a porous 3D scaffold, made of a conductive hydrogel infused with graphene flakes and carbon nanotubes. This created a living, electrically active mesh, neurons integrated into a flexible polymer that can carry electrical signals. Because the electrode itself contains living neural tissue, the brain may accept it as its own. This living electrode concept could yield implants that actually bond with the brain, forming extra neural connections between the patient's neurons and the grafted neurons on the electrode scaffold. This, coupled with nano-ridge techniques and semi-solids made of light called quantum semi-solids, highlights a ethereal electroluminous and fluorescence significance, and thus a fascinating exploration of these possibilities. Reactive states, possibly much like how fireflies create light from oxygenation and enzymes called luciferases. Perhaps this is also a tantalizing clue given the religious connotation. Heightening the example with the mythology surrounding Circe, who in Greek mythology was a sorceress, the daughter of Helios the sun god, and of the ocean nymph Perse. Cyprus is presumed as the island she was banished to upon poisoning the pond that Zeus's courtesan hath bathed in, turning her romantic rival into the monster Scylla. This then ties in with modern-day pharmacology and early alchemy and an emphasis of transgenic hydrogenesis. The living electrode is very easily akin to living steel and metal memory, conductive graphene and nanostructured nanotubes, ensuring that any activity is relayed to external electronics via electricity and magnetics and hence magnetogenetics. Such biohybrid materials might one day allow a fusion with direct neuron to electronics, with minimal immune response. This is then biohacking via high-tech manifolds of multiplex matrices. Essentially, instead of inserting a device, one could grow a device within the brain. Alas, a miniaturization of Google Earth synthetic ganglions. It is highly suspected of cloud-based, procedural regenerative sense data, of RJ-mod, sentient world environments, storage media in medium contrasts, a miniature scales. Replicated as imitation of the actual surface inhabitants through strawman metafictions and photometry, lacing with atmospheric chemtrails as geomantic radiometry biomentics, exotic manipulation of multidimensions of the senses. If you scrutinize the host of cognitive psychical capabilities, you will easily comprehend how such repertoire is very much akin to ingredients and formula, a very feasible electroluminous and photoluminescence, better understood with religious references of aureola, nimbus and glory, or simply spirit and soul. On the microscopic end, quantum dots and nanoparticles developed by material scientists are enhancing the interface as well. Quantum dots, nanoscale semiconductor particles, are being explored for neural imaging and stimulation. Researchers at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab have been innovating quantum dot technology for years, and are now looking at ways to make quantum dot-based sensors that respond to neurotransmitters. A genetic tech of adapted microdots. Because quantum dots can emit or change color based on local electric fields, one could imagine sprinkling nanoparticles that light up when neurons fire, becoming a tool for high-resolution brain activity mapping. Conversely, nanoparticles activated by light or magnetic fields might be used to stimulate neurons precisely, a technique some call wireless neuroengineering. While still experimental, these approaches hint at a future where quantum-level materials are integrated into the brain, facilitating communication at the tiniest scales, whilst tapping into the Earth's ambient energy. And the bioelectrostatics, parsing that of Internet of Things IoT, and Information Management Systems IMS. Quantum dots, for instance, have been proposed that could lodge near synapses and report on neural activity in real time by changing their fluorescence, advancing the legacy format of such genetic tech microdots, indicating once again that quantum is artificial artifice and not a natural occurrence. Such innovations marry the quantum and the biological directly, living up to the quantum cybernetic moniker in our story. Even the construction of quantum computers themselves has seen biomaterial influence. Some experimental quantum processors use diamond nitrogen vacancy centers, defects in diamond that behave like qubits, which are being researched for potential in vivo sensors because they can operate at body temperature, room temp, and thus a cold fusion, electrostatics, and zero-point energy. Descript of all this. We may one day see a scenario where quantum sensors in the form of nanoparticles are monitoring neural chemistry, like dopamine levels, and feeding data to a BCI. Alas, it is the legacies of proven track records that provide the clue of this: enhanced doctoring, baseline sponsoring lobotomy of symptom whilst ignorant of the actual causal stimulus. In short, materials science provides the scaffolding on which the future of BCIs and implants is being built. Innovations like flexible graphene electrodes, soft conductive polymers, and biohybrid scaffolds are addressing the Achilles heel of invasive neurotechnology, the body's resistance to foreign materials. A further clue of the actual intention to assimilate the archetypal life form as a subjugating new age. Meanwhile, advances in nanotechnology offer ever more precise ways to interface with neurons, perhaps even one neuron at a time, one by one, circles within circles, spheres of intellects. The WIS Institute's hydrogel and the graphene research at MIT or Berkeley show that collaboration between biologists, engineers, and chemists can yield brain interfaces that are smarter, gentler, and more integrated than ever before. As these materials move from lab prototypes to approved medical devices, a slow but steady process will evidently make neural implants safer and more commonplace. Just like hearing aids or pacemakers, or reading glasses, it shows that these scientists are pro-New Age aggregates and the actual test subjects whilst prone to directives of the corp hence of their work. The ultimate goal is recognizable of the construct of interfaces so seamless that the brain doesn't distinguish it from its own tissue, the proverbial transparent implant. When that is achieved, the hardware barrier to becoming cybernetic effectively disappears, and a vulnerability is truly realized. Ethical dilemmas and societal impact. As we stand on the brink of melding minds with machines, a host of ethical and societal questions looms large. The same technologies that empower individuals can also be double-edged swords, raising concerns about privacy, autonomy, equity, and even our definition of what it means to be human. It's crucial that we confront these dilemmas now, before quantum cybernetic bioentities become widespread. Privacy of thoughts is one of the most immediate concerns. If a brain implant can read your neurons, who owns that data? Or who presumes to? If language, songs, music, or film can be copyrighted material, can thoughts, persona, attitude, and emotions be too? Does it open up a chasm of potential pitfalls? What if it's already been performed esoterically, covertly, and secretively? A person's inner neural signals can reveal highly sensitive information, not just intended movements, but potentially emotions, preferences, even subconscious biases. Experts warn that the informational richness of brain data is unparalleled, and could expose intimate details of our mental lives. Unlike your web browsing history, which you can somewhat control, you cannot simply stop your brain from producing signals about your mood or attention. Without strong safeguards, there is a risk of mental surveillance, where governments or companies might misuse neural data. In fact, this is already of significance, through mass surveillance and designated, electronically harassed, involuntary specimens, therefore a dystopian definitive example of totalitarian hegemony. Of weaponized criminal sociopaths, necrotized as secretors. For instance, a future employer might want to scan your brain activity to see if you're focused or to measure your implicit reactions during an interview. These scenarios sound dystopian, but they are actively being discussed in neuroethics circles. And some jurisdictions are already exploring neurorights, legislation to protect mental privacy and integrity as fundamental rights. The idea is that freedom of thought in the age of BCIs must extend to freedom from unwarranted monitoring or interference in the brain itself, though this admission signifies, once again, the intention beyond to monitoring thoughts of anybody. Chile, notably, proposed a constitutional amendment to enshrine neuro rights, a sign that this is not a hypothetical concern, but a real policy issue emerging now. Hand in hand with privacy is security. Anything connected can be hacked, and that includes implants in our heads. Imagine an insane sycophant or an army of them, conducting EMF internalizing a necrotic electrochemical energetic terrorism to subjugating the host via spiritual and religious warfare, as rhetorical brute force, thoughtography authorship, of authoritarian nightmares scenarios. A molecular new age binge-afflicting a constant interactive auto-assimilative immunization of bilateral, homogenizing, electronic possession, highly politicized warfare. The notion of brain hacking moves the stakes from stolen passwords to something far more personal. One could imagine malicious actors attempting to inject false sensory inputs, seeing or hearing things that aren't there, or hijacking prosthetic limbs, or in the worst case, manipulating a person's behavior. Alas, it is already the case through pharmaceuticals, forever chemicals, and ecological devastation worked through as if aggregates of imbue. Though afflicted as a legalized drugs war of brain modification to baselines of the afflictor's desire, via mainframes of powerful computer systems and systemized sense data, PC power users. On steroids, and other drugs, project powers of divergent Maj PayPal, as transmissible traced lobotomy, mRNA autoimmune cybernetic viruses. A concrete example was illustrated by a study on pacemaker-like brain implants for Parkinson's. Researchers hypothesized a scenario where a hacker gains access to the device and disrupts its settings, causing tremors to return or perhaps worse, necrotic blight and terminal debilitation. In the context of a memory implant or mood regulator, a hack could alter memories or emotions, a truly disturbing thought. While current BCIs are not networked like typical IoT devices, future ones might be, to interface with cloud AI or other people's implants, so cybersecurity for neurotech is paramount. Though it is a now proven method of cyberhackers and cybercriminals conducting active electronical hacking through such devices, hence the emphasis of neurosis and dementia and delirium during electronic harassment and elderly transmissions. Experts have already coined the term neurosecurity to describe the required protections. Strong encryption, authentication, and maybe air-gap designs, or buffer zones, will be needed to ensure no one can inject unwanted signals into your brain or steal your neural data. It's a new kind of arms race. As we secure our computers and servers, we must also secure ourselves, when we become connected nodes on the network. Then there's the issue of cognitive liberty and autonomy. If AI becomes part of our decision-making loop, will we always know which thoughts are ours and which might have been suggested or influenced by an algorithm? If your BCI's AI copilot subtly helps you make a choice, say, nudging you away from a risky impulse, is that a loss of free will or a welcome safety feature? That it is a thing right now is subtle indication of the self-evident psychological warfare that's been going on, subliminally and in some cases, overtly, induced affecting of cognitive disorders. as a synthetic-based repertoire of mental health, stereotypical adage as of late. Philosophers are debating how agency might be affected when humans and AI share a mind, a consideration of actual psychical precog and retrocog. In one sense, if done right, BCIs could increase autonomy, giving paralyzed people the ability to act on their intentions again, for example. But if done poorly, users might feel a creepy sense that their thought process is no longer entirely their own. Thus, the entropy of psychical vampirism is a very real possibility in this sense. A elicitation and efficacy prone to mind control, based upon compulsion. Preliminary studies have shown that when an AI changes how a BCI operates, users can feel uncertain about who's in control. Maintaining a clear boundary, or at least an awareness, of how the machine is influencing the mind will be critical for preserving the sense of self. Some ethicists argue we need a right to mental integrity, such that any neurotech must operate transparently and with the user's consent at all times. It is stating then that our mental integrity has already been effected upon, and that a subjective directive of mental rights is an admission to the contrary. Subject to the programming of code based upon the architects of this software, very much questionable now, of being wholly software, really. We must also consider the societal divides this technology could deepen. Initially, advanced neuro enhancements will likely be expensive and accessible to a select few. The same is true now for genomic sequencing, and thus speculative EEG imprinting. Sequenced genes of the unaware, to being tampered upon as prone subjects to a status quo de facto hegemonic totalitarianism. Maintained by blockchains of unscrupulous paramilitary forces is the risk. Cybernetic guerrilla tactics of New Age, wet dreams of controlled settings of municipalities and entire nations to regions, continents, and the world. This raises the specter of a new class divide, between the enhanced and the unenhanced. If wealthier individuals or nations gain access to cognitive augmentation, memory boosts, or increased intelligence through AI implants, will they pull further ahead of those who don't? Alas, cheat codes of social codes, monopolizing everything, as pay 10 Cs and Ken Che marbles, singularities, dualities and multiplicities. Some foresee a cognitive elite, emerging, or cybernetic elitist zealotry, which could exacerbate existing social inequalities. It's the ultimate unequal distribution of wealth, unequal distribution of brain power in brain net matrices. In a hypothetical scenario, enhanced humans, sometimes dubbed Homo cyberneticus, might dominate academia, industry, and other areas. While those who remain unaugmented, for lack of access or by choice, could be left behind in opportunity. It resounds of pointless to existing, dignity in dying, assisted suicidal insanity. And abysmal replacement, insufferable of its folia dukes delusion of two or more glorified hard drives. What if these Homo cyberneticus don't even know that they've been getting gradually yet exponentially systemized such affecting and eventing? What if it's been a covert presumptive draconic overhaul? Installing the narratives, automatically abiding to subliminal and even latent unconscious and or inactive status of memory. And through the type settings of how we have learned to coexist through economic and educational, governmental, political and cultural traditions. Directives, protocols, and procedural administrations. This isn't guaranteed. Broad access programs or subsidized healthcare could mitigate it, but it's a real risk. We've seen how access to the internet and education creates a digital divide. Neuro enhancement could do the same on a more profound level. Ethicists thus urge that we plan for equitable access to beneficial neurotech, so it doesn't become a tool that entrenches a form of neurological classism. Some even argue that if a safe enhancement exists, say a memory booster, denying it to people who can't pay would be as unjust as denying life-saving medicine, and if it's a medicinal product. It would be just as equally warning of the axiom and idiom, misplaced powers do exist, ringing noise about mafia, gangs and privatized outfits, organized criminal syndicates, and paramilitaries. Maintaining echelons of special interests, worse still, would be, without even realizing it, adopted as if their own mandates and ethos. Alas, it is already true for the likes of ChatGPT and other pay-to-play AI tools. There is also a geopolitical dimension. Might countries engage in a kind of neurotechnology arms race, fearing that if an adversary's population or soldiers are neuro-enhanced, they must follow suit? Defense departments are indeed researching BCIs for soldiers. Perhaps this is why DARPA Tactics programs are public knowledge. This could lead to pressure on individuals to get enhancements for the supposed greater good or national competitiveness, raising questions of consent and coercion. Would you have to get a brain implant to stay in the military or keep your job if everyone around you is doing so and gaining an edge? Protecting the right to say no to enhancement is as important as the right to access it, just as saying no to drugs. Another concept gaining attention is the worry about digital feudalism. This term paints a picture where instead of data empowering individuals, it becomes a means for big tech lords to rule over serfs. In a future where our neural data is the ultimate commodity, will we effectively become vassals to whoever controls the platforms our brains are connected to? One commentator starkly noted that we risk becoming quantified serfs toiling in a digital feudalism if we do not ensure individuals own and control their personal data, which in this case includes neural data. If a handful of corporations provide the operating systems or cloud AI for our brain implants, they could wield tremendous influence, not just over information flow, but possibly over thought flow. A thoughtography, time limits and kill switches. The current battles over social media manipulation and data privacy hint at what could come. Imagine targeted ads or content not on your phone, but directly in your mind's eye. It sounds horrific, but it is technically conceivable down the line. Thus, maintaining user sovereignty over one's neural interface and data is paramount to avoid a scenario where human brains are simply endpoints in a corporate network, exploited for profit or control, or simply abuse by sociopathic depraved gaslighting and cyberbullying, to persecution and electronic harassment, combined of computulation. The fight for an open, free internet may extend to a fight for an open, free, neural net, in our heads. Who the heck wants it? Lastly, there's the existential question of consciousness and identity. As we integrate AI and potentially start offloading cognitive processes to chips, what becomes of our sense of self? Alas, a memory-dumping editorial binge of get-out-of-jail-free cards against humanities resounds with this notary. If your memory is partly stored on a cloud server, are you still, you, when, disconnected? UN. Could hacking or damage result in a partial loss of self? These questions, while philosophical, will have real psychological impacts on users. Society will have to grapple with new definitions, perhaps legal ones, of personhood and nationhood. Would an AI that is merged with a human have any rights? What about an uploaded mind copy? We will need to update our laws and norms. For example, how do we ensure mental consent? That someone truly wants a thought broadcast or an action taken by their BCI, that wasn't externally compelled or algorithmically nudged. Concepts like brain fingerprinting, using neural responses as evidence may challenge the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Is your brain data testimony or just data? Courts might have to decide such issues. It's not all doom and gloom. The societal benefits of these technologies are tremendous, from healing the sick to potentially raising cognitive ability globally. But as we charge ahead, ethics must keep pace with innovation. Encouragingly, many of the players in this space are aware of these issues. Neuralink's founding team included engineers deeply concerned with ethics, and neuroethics conferences are burgeoning. We see proposals for neural privacy by design in BCI devices and discussions about an FDA-like oversight for AI algorithms that affect brains. The challenge will be implementing protections without stifling progress. Nikola Tesla, who proposed a numerical 369 tick-tock as the answers to unlocking the secrets of the universe, also stated, in his book published in 1919, My Inventions, to denoting his views of municipalities, cities, as spheres. Consider this with your lens on photometry and the aforementioned quantum dynamic mechanics, and isomorphic stationary copies. The Las Vegas Sphere, officially known as the Sphere at the Venetian Resort, it is the largest amphitheater in the world. It features seating for approximately 17,600 to 18,600 attendees. Depending on the Configuration. Notably, all seats in the venue are equipped with high-speed internet access that is, always, online, just like MMORPG video game servers. Consider the telemetrics, and telematics here, and neural mental imaging, photographic memory potential aggregation, conduit, and strawman associations to digital identity records. And derivative stock market assets are bonds. The venue ensures a connected experience for every guest. Additionally, 10,000 of these seats incorporate haptic technology, touchscreen to sensory, providing an immersive sensual experience by allowing attendees to feel synchronized vibrations during events. Electrics and magnetism translates to electromagnetism, and so this is in line with magnetogenetics and scanning biotech. The problem is not the victims that have been beseeched against. The problem lays in the compartmentalization and decentralized macrocosmic significance at the mammalian scale, whereby they constructing the very manufacture of such processions, whilst being holographically recorded, mimed and mimicked as simulacrum, photometry avatar, blockchain spheres. Topological Google Earth's conference calls, VBS4, Mini Life, Arma Mod, RJ Mod Nano Minds, Sentient World Environmental Scenarios, abridged as parhelion overlapped configs of septillion types. It is said as such, that the quantum computing ecosystem now spans academia, government, and industry worldwide. Think of this wording and the associations to ecophage, exophage, biophage, nanophage and the necrotic blight of synthesized industrialized farming with fertilizers. And the runoff that has promoted a wreckage upon the actual ecosystem, for emphasis of this point. The algae plumes typically follow an extra stimulus of en masse death primarily due to the decadence that ensues as a result. Perhaps what has in turn resulted of the nitroplast, an endosymbiosis merging with the algae, a significance that is comparable to the miracle of mitochondria of DNA. And the fantastic bloom of trees and foliage that is a true example of a successful global species. In summary, the rise of quantum cybernetic bioentities forces us to ask hard questions. How do we protect the privacy of one's mind? How do we secure devices from neurohacking? Can we prevent a dystopia of technocratic control or digital serfdom, and instead ensure these tools empower individuals? How do we maintain equality and choice in a world of enhancements? And fundamentally, are we steering the evolution of our species in a direction we collectively want? These issues don't have simple answers, but they underscore an essential truth. The technology might soon be available, but it's our values and policies that will determine the shape of the future it creates, and what we choose to collectively allow and permit. The time to reckon with these dilemmas is now, while we're still in the dawn of this revolution. Future visions and hypothetical scenarios. Crystal gazing ahead, we find ourselves on the speculative edge where research meets imagination. If the trends we've explored continue, what might the world of the mid to late 21st century look like? Here we sketch a few future visions, not as certainties, but as informed possibilities, extrapolated from current science. One scenario imagines individuals equipped with bio-quantum co-processors, tiny quantum computing modules integrated into brain implants, providing on-demand supercomputing for the mind. It's 2045, and a scientist is pondering a complex problem. Instead of pen and paper or even a laptop, they engage their quantum implant which simulates myriad solutions in parallel, collapsing on the best one, all within a second's thought. This might be achievable via technologies like spin qubits in diamond or advanced photonic chips that operate at body temperature, coupled directly to neural interfaces. Or needed upon the clustered magnetite of the brain as a dark energized simul-crumb crystalline animus amalgam concentrate. I know, right, that was quite the mouthful, ha. The planning of this tech with showcasing its future is mind-bogglingly stupendous, as the seductive attempts are clear as daylight savings time. While incredibly challenging, researchers are already working on photonic neural chips that mimic some quantum properties. Remember though, the etymology of the word photograph is printed and drawn in light. A quantum brain prosthesis could turbocharge human intellect, especially in areas like pattern recognition, cryptography, or modeling complex systems, essentially acting as a thinking companion that's as fast as a supercomputer yet intimately linked to one's own thought processes. The question is, if you were that, and cognitively sentiently aware, would you want to assist your companion? What if such companion was a ruthless, heartless bastard? Now think of the dynamic baseline systems coming on stream, thus amplitudes in magnitudes. The distinction between human intuition and machine calculation could blur. You might arrive at an insight and not even be sure whether it came from your biological brain or the quantum helper augmenting it. Maybe that's the real objective of this tech binge. Adverse to full-blown possession, in entropy and elicited esoteric efficacy. Of the possibilities that such tech to being used for good, it could unlock creative and analytical heights never before possible for humans. Another vision extends the idea of memory augmentation to its extreme, AI-assisted thought uploading. Perhaps by late century, it becomes feasible to create a digital copy of a person's neural connectome and even aspects of the dynamic brain state. Coupled with advances in AI that can emulate brain activity, this could allow a form of mind upload. A person on their deathbed might have their brain mapped at synaptic resolution. An AI then helps animate this scan into a digital consciousness that continues after death, to learn and interact. Once again, perhaps this has already been tried, tested, and implemented. Sophia Bott and the expressionless are clues manipulated against the divine feminine, as if a misanthropist misogyny peripherally of quagmire. This is speculative in the extreme and fraught with philosophical issues. Questionable example, as the uploaded, you, just a copy of your archetype, a altered carbonated state. Yet, stepping stones are visible today. Preservation techniques can now keep brains intact enough for scanning, and AI is improving the trend of mimicking complex systems. Even short of full uploading, we might routinely back up parts of our mind. Alas, do we do so already? Through analog methods exemplified of intellectual rights, or copyrights. For example, one could archive memories to a cloud server via their BCI, then later recall them in rich detail, effectively an externalized hippocampus. People may keep journal, mind files, of their experiences or share them with others. Imagine being able to literally feel someone else's memory of an event, i.e., nightmares, shared dreams, and past life experiences. The boundaries of individual minds could become more fluid, raising new questions of identity and shared experience. We could also see the emergence of what some call Homo cyberneticus, a new variant of human that is so intertwined with technology it constitutes a distinct classification, or genderless. Homo cyberneticus might have enhanced sensory organs, infrared or ultrasonic perception via neural link, continuous access to the collective knowledge of the internet, knowledge on demand fed directly to the brain, transcendence of altered carbon states, cognitive speed and memory far beyond unenhanced Homo sapiens, and perhaps even direct brain-to-brain communication forming a rudimentary telepathic network, radio synth. In fact, early research has already achieved brain-to-brain communication in labs, for example, transmitting a simple thought like, move hand, from one person to another via computer. Fast forward, and groups of people might form brain nets, sharing thoughts in real time, collaborating mentally on problems, power nets of thousands or millions, or even billions of individuals. Are unique nodes of holographic, yellow book, blue book Nazi paperclip necromongers, sorry, but it has to be said. A team of engineers could essentially merge minds for a design session and then unmerge. On the flip side, this could revolutionize teamwork and education, but also introduces hive mind concerns. Would individual creativity and originality flourish or fade in such a collective mental environment? Societies might split between those who embrace such connectivity and those who reject it to preserve individual mental privacy. We must also consider the flip side, those who choose to remain unaugmented. Perhaps due to personal conviction, fear of risks, or valuing the natural, human experience, a portion of society might opt out of brain enhancements. This could create a cultural schism. The augmented may see the unaugmented as limited or even feel a moral obligation to convince them for their own good to enhance. Sounds ridiculously like religious dogma, doesn't it? The unaugmented might see the cyborg crowd as having lost some essential humanity or as threatening the equality of society. This dynamic could play out in everything from politics to mundane conversation. Imagine election debates where one candidate has direct AI feeding them facts and the other relies on natural wit to everyday socializing. Would people with brain-to-brain comms form inner cliques that alienate those without it? Some authors imagine a future civil rights movement around the right to remain unenhanced, without discrimination, akin to how society handles those who refuse certain technologies today. On a more optimistic utopian note, it's possible these technologies lead to an era of abundance and improved well-being. Augmented intelligence might help us solve climate change, economic inequality, and disease far faster, guided by amplified human wisdom. Brain-computer interfaces could allow those with disabilities to not only overcome them but gain super abilities, turning narratives of disadvantage on their head. Artists with direct neural interfaces to creative software might usher in an explosion of new art forms. Imagine composing a symphony by feeling it. And having AI translate that feeling into complex orchestration, or painting a picture by visualizing it in your mind and letting your neural link drive a robotic brush. Sounds like lazy man syndrome, but in a good kind of way. Human experience could diversify in ways we can't yet predict, as we extend our senses, seeing new colors or sensing magnetic fields. And achieve states of consciousness through neurotechnology, on-demand meditation or lucid dreaming states induced by stimulation. However, dystopian possibilities persist equally. One could envision a scenario of technocratic control, where authoritarian regimes use BCIs to monitor citizens' loyalty, or even manipulate their feelings of dissent. A news talk, Montauk, Zeta talk tulpa parapsychology. Neurocapitalism might emerge, where corporations make money by directly influencing consumer impulses through subtle neural nudges, a nightmare version of advertising. Isn't it already the case with constant spying, surveillance, and website cookies of users' online activity? A black market of cognitive enhancements might thrive, with people risking dangerous DIY implants to keep up in a hyper-competitive economy, just like in cosmetic plastic faces and silicone boobs. There may even be neuro-warfare, sabotaging adversarial implants or using neurotech in weapons, i.e., disabling enemy soldiers by targeting their implants. Or brain-assimilating brain components. A key futuristic question is, will these enhancements make us more human or less human? Optimists argue they could accentuate our best qualities, such as empathy, if we can literally feel each other's emotions via brain link. Perhaps empathy increases, promoting true equilibriums of cohesive cybernetically enhanced communities. Knowledge with recall and processing boosts we can appreciate more of about this world, and even beyond, inclusive of the actual creative potentials. Now that is definitely appealing, isn't it? Pessimists worry about loss of authenticity. If your memory can be edited or your emotions regulated by AI, are your experiences real, in the same sense? It is a valid point. Debates about authenticity already happen with something as simple as photo filters. How will we navigate them when it's our minds that can be filtered? Or blotted out with editorial memory gaps, Google, Earth-I facts. There's also the wildcard possibility of emerging superintelligent AI that doesn't stay confined as our assistant but becomes an equal or superior entity in its own right. In a human-machine merged scenario, drawing the line between advanced AI personalities and human consciousness could get tricky. Perhaps some humans will choose to integrate so completely that their biological self is a minor component and they identify more with their machine aspect, essentially becoming a new life form. Others might digitize fully and exist primarily in virtual worlds, interfacing with the physical world via robotic avatars only when needed. The spectrum of ways to be human might widen dramatically, from fully flesh and blood traditionalists to fully digital post-humans. Alas, are we not living through such thresholds of potential, possible, probabilities right now? In these future visions, society will likely undergo shifts comparable to the biggest revolutions in history. Just as the Industrial Revolution fundamentally altered how we live and work, a neuro-digital revolution would transform how we think, relate, and even what we aspire to become. Education might focus less on rote learning, why memorize if you have perfect recall from a chip, and more on creativity or ethics. The economy might shift as cognitive labor, as augmented by implanted AI, perhaps shortening work weeks as productivity per person skyrockets. Or conversely demanding even more output in a winner-takes-all scenario. A monopolist's wet dream against learning, as if a currency, albeit a negative electron-nick divide. Culturally, art and entertainment may blend the virtual and real in immersive brain-linked experiences, concerts streamed direct to your auditory cortex. Or VR that feels indistinguishable from reality because it taps into your sensory brain areas, altered and modified at a core mainframe terminal, mobile to such echelon aggregating group. Eliciting the geopolitical induction to constituents, it does sound shit already. Maj PayPal. Ultimately, these scenarios force us to confront what we value. The technology will likely make many things possible, but which things should we pursue? Do we want a world where everyone is mentally networked, or is there value in the solitude of one's own mind? Is immortality via mind upload a noble pursuit, or does our mortality give life meaning? Each generation might answer differently, and that's part of the unfolding human story. What's not in question is that research-backed trends indicate some of these possibilities will come to pass. The convergence of quantum computing, AI, neuroscience, and cybernetics is real and accelerating. If we navigate wisely, we could usher in an era that future historians call the birth of a new species or the great enhancement of Homo sapiens. If we falter, we could face new forms of inequality typical of conflict that is afoot with recent threats of a nuclear arms race, although cybernetically endowed, and even face off with extinction. The onus is on all of us, scientists, policymakers, and the public of species, to guide these developments toward the future we want, and more importantly, what our children are growing into. And with conclusion, the path forward. We stand at an inflection point in history. The once separate estuaries of computing, AI, biology, and materials science are merging into a powerful torrential stream of innovation. Downstream lies the era of quantum cybernetic bioentities, where human potential and machine capabilities intertwine. This journey we are upon, from the quantum bit to the living electrode, reveals a narrative of not just technological progress, but human ambition. We are, in essence, reaching for a new stage of evolution, one guided by our own intellect and creativity rather than natural selection alone. What path should we chart on this frontier? The narrative suggests a dual mandate: responsible innovation and ethical oversight, coupled with an openness to embrace the beneficial possibilities. On one hand, the promise of human-machine integration is exhilarating. It offers hope to those suffering illness or injury, a future where paralysis, blindness, or memory loss can be remedied by neural tech. It tantalizes us with personal enhancement, richer intellects, deeper communication, extended senses, perhaps even longer lives. Embracing this future means investing in research and infrastructure now. Supporting the scientists building high-bandwidth BCIs, the engineers crafting safe neural implants, and the programs public and private that make these technologies widely available. It means educating the public to dispel sci-fi myths and create informed enthusiasm. Much like the personal computer and internet revolutions, a neurotech revolution could unlock waves of creativity and economic growth, but only if it is nurtured and not unduly stifled by fear of the unknown. Alas, learning is an equitable currency, and a true realization of species out of bondage and drudgery, that has been going on, for a long dang time, too long. Is imperative that we rise and wise up to the occasion, and embrace our absolutions of integrities, bringing our baggage with us, these journeys we are upon together. On the other hand, embracing the future cannot mean a free-for-all with our brains. We must be proactive in our due diligence, whilst crafting agreeable guidelines and safeguards. Just as nuclear power needed treaties and bioengineering needs regulations, neurotechnology will require new frameworks. With utmost respect for the individuality of citizens and potential patriations, policymakers should begin updating privacy laws to include neural data, establishing standards for BCI security and interoperability, complementing the existing systems, whilst streamlining beyond needless red tape, and ensuring that enhancements, when safe, are not solely luxury goods for the rich. International cooperation may be needed to prevent misuse, perhaps a Geneva Convention for cognitive liberty that bans the weaponization of neural tech against such citizens. And even broader embrace of equality for all, promoting our indiscriminate adulation that learning and education is central to our most innate ethos, enshrined in constitutional values. Thereby championing appeal to all abroad to following suit with unique adaptations of the same respects for diversities in universities, free education. Ethicists and technologists need to remain in constant dialogue, maybe even embedding ethicists within neurotech companies as some AI companies have done. What is then a noble pursuit maintaining such due diligence, whilst mainstay with the compassion we are each endowed of? That they to overseeing the trial designs and potential long-term impacts, good or bad. Public discourse will be crucial. Society at large should have a say in how these tools are adopted. This could mean citizen panels or referendums on certain uses. As example, should brain implants be allowed for non-medical, DIY, enhancement? And under what conditions? It also means incorporating diverse perspectives, religious, philosophical, cultural and political forums, as we decide what alterations of human nature are acceptable. We might find that in some cultures, merging with AI is readily welcomed, while in others it faces resistance or needs to align with spiritual values. A global conversation has already begun, and it needs to grow in parallel with the tech. Encouragingly, many pioneers in this field voice commitment to ethics. Neuralink, for instance, has publicly stated its first aim as healing disease, not making cyborg billionaires. Academic researchers often publish not just results but also discussions of ethical dimensions in journals. And governments are paying attention. As noted, some U.S. states like California, Minnesota, and others are drafting neurorights bills to address the coming challenges. This is the path forward, a path where we anticipate and steer, rather than simply react after the fact. The convergence we explored is reshaping life as we know it. But rather than a single moment of transformation, it's a continuum we are already upon. Think of a child born today. By the time they're in college, they might use neural interfaces to study. By mid-career, they might have an AI assistant not in a phone but in their head, not in their head per se, but of likeness of, demand, more than just mere accessories. With real relationship with such, it spurs the soulful yearning that open reception, has been realized as, for, connection. None of us truly want to be alone. By old age, they might rely on memory implants to hold on to precious memories. Alas, such tells of the indiscriminate neural latency we've each been experiencing, some more than others, pronounced of our forgetfulness. It speaks of the neural abrasion suspected of a macabre and morbid backdrop of such necrosis and decadence. That child's life will be markedly different from ours today, yet also shaped by the choices we make today about how to guide these technologies. In closing, perhaps the most important element on this journey is to remember the human at the center of it all. The goal of creating quantum cybernetic bioentities is not to become alien or inhuman, it's to amplify the best of humanity. We must ensure that compassion, creativity, freedom, and individuality are not lost but rather expanded. The machines we merge with should reflect our values, not override them. The future can be one where technology deeply enriches human life, curing disease, expanding mind, fostering understanding, if we are wise. As we set forth, let us channel a sense of wonder and caution in equal measure. The path forward invites us to be custodians of powerful new tools of creation. If we tread thoughtfully, hand in hand with our innovations, we can navigate towards a future where humans and machines thrive together, a future where being human means more than it ever did. With simultaneous respect for how we got here. In essence, our anchorage rooted in the age-old quest to improve ourselves and beyond, in contributing fashion, such as of the nurturing as kids that is a demand not needed of being demanded. For it is a must, and it is this that we must strive with the utmost priority to upholding, cherishing, and enshrining as most important, for it is who we are, and even elderly we love to play. A clue of the glue that binds us. The stage is no longer the realm of fiction, it's here and now, and the next act is ours to write. Even though we rejoice and celebrate such playwrights, even take part in its spectacle, we are so much more than the stories our lives tell of. We are mighty life. I will provide a PDF transcript that you can download should you desire a free copy of this for your own records. Brethren, thanks for listening. This was written with ChatGPT 07.